Welcome, everyone. You're listening to Nephology, the podcast dedicated to crypto, accounting, business, finance, and much, much more. I'm Joe David, the founder of Nephos Group in Minor. Please note that all conversations recorded are professional opinions, and if you'd like to know more or gain support, please reach out to the team directly. Now on to the next episode. Hi guys, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nephos Group podcast. I'm actually really excited personally to have Dan and Alex from Simplicity Consultancy here today. The guys are a team of economists who specialise in tokenomics in the crypto world. And I guess their goal is to revolutionise the token architecture and the methodology for tokenomics that, I guess, summing it up nicely, make a project successful or not. So welcome, guys, and really good to have you on the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Pleasure for being here. Cheers, David.
Yeah, pleasure to be here as well.
So as I said in the intro, I'm genuinely excited to have you guys on, but that's because I'm a bit sad and I love all the kind of technical aspects of economy and tokenomics and all that sort of stuff. But hopefully there are some other saddos listening as well that are also excited. Do you want to just give a quick background, guys, on who you are and what Simplicity is and how you can support people?
Yeah, sure. So just a little bit about ourselves.
We went to a quick rundown.
We'll do the normal rundown. Yeah, so just a little bit about ourselves. We went to University of Leeds where we studied economics. We got into crypto in 2017, where we just started investing, sort of learning about the space, doing a bit of research. And from there, we actually managed to get into the world of crypto in terms of actually for professionally at the start of this year, 2022. And we just sort of noticed a bit of an issue in the space in terms of projects were typically wanting to create tokens just to raise funds or to expedite bureaucracy. And that was sort of out of most founders, I guess, that was sort of the reason they originally wanted to create a token. So we decided to actually, found Simplicity Consultancy where we focus in on the economic side of things. Alex, if you want to go over what we actually do.
Yeah, for sure. So we specialize in token architecture, which includes the utilities, economy, tokenomics, emissions, and modeling. We also do pitch decks and white papers and connect the projects to anyone they need. But the main focus is token architecture. And to very briefly summarize with the utilities, there's only a few things that necessitate creation of a token, and then everything else is sort of extra add-ons to add some more demand. So we explore that with the projects. Then we move on to the economy, where we connect the utilities to the different actors within the ecosystem and the different parts of the ecosystem itself. Make a nice circular flow of capital, where you have the supply, you have the demand, you have your interest, inflation, taxes, like a normal economy. Then we move on to the tokenomics, which includes everything, the vesting schedules, valuations, etc. And we build that from the ground up. We look at it financially, and then from there is where we get all the allocations, valuations, and so on and so forth. Then we chart out the emissions, which is just the inflation, just to make sure that there's no sudden supply shocks. And then we also have a modeler who uses Python to chart out the different economies, basically, on Python, and then generate a few price charts for us to see which monetary and fiscal policies would be best given what we've designed.
Nice. And how do you, because obviously like any forecast or model, it's subject to outside influence in a sense of, I guess what's happening in the UK, for example, right now. How do you guys take into account kind of the macro environment as well? Is that a large part of the economic process for you?
Yeah, so in terms of the conceptualization of the project, it's not really part of the project. When we conceptualize, it's more so just pure theory of how to sort of make the economy circular. But when we're actually working on the modeling, there's loads of different inputs we put in, everything from interest rates in America to upcoming FOMC meetings, what the predictions are. And nothing's perfect, of course. It's a new technology. It's a new space as well. There's no like set in stone framework that works for everything. But it's sort of, we try to do as well as we can. We put in as many inputs as possible. and it's never going to be perfect, but it allows us to see get a general idea of what would work and what wouldn't work. Maybe the level of success or the level of failure might not be accurate, but it will give us a general idea of the direction of the token's price, I guess, and how the token would perform. And another thing with the modeling is it's all well and good us doing the economy and the general modeling, but if the team doesn't deliver, or if something happens on that side, it's still a very new space, and we can never be 100% certain. But it does help us get, I said, the general idea and frame certain things correctly, I guess, certain aspects of the economy.
Yeah, nice. And I guess, I've got a couple of of questions, but where do you think that most projects fail? Is it poor economics? Is it, the fact that the founders are not business people, and therefore they need people like us, for example, as accountants, to support them through the business journey? Where do you see the biggest failure in projects?
Generally speaking, we see it in tokenomics, to be honest. There's, as Dan said, either the founders just don't deliver on their promises, which is also very common. But the tokenomics, we feel like, is the biggest pain point, because it incorporates within it the supply and the demand. And if you don't, first of all, if you don't balance the two out, so let's say you're expecting to get 1,000 users, but then you're inflating your economy with so many tokens that the value per user per token is just so low, you're just going to get an inflation of tokens, and there's not enough demand, to bring the price back up. And that's basically what's happened with pretty much every main project on the planet, to be honest, other than the ones who have enough hype about them to balance that out. A perfect example is Axie Infinity, as everyone knows, just pure hyperinflation. But it happens with pretty much every project. And as well, just the supply itself. So, for instance, if you give 40% to VCs, 50% to VCs, that's just sell pressure. Like, a VC isn't going to be using your DeFi, decentralized exchange. They don't care. They invested into you. So for you to give such a high percentage to someone who's just going to sell in the future is, it's not the end of the world. You can do it, but you need to factor that into the vesting schedule, into your roadmap, and so on and so forth. So because crypto companies primarily have this token at its core, and the price of the token is a direct reflection of how well the company is doing, that is generally the biggest pain point. And then sort of externally is just the product. A lot of these crypto companies, they don't offer anything good. So that's another main issue. But yeah.
So just on staying on the failure point, because why not be negative, eh? No, just like what, you've got a project, and it's not going so well. The token price has fallen through the floor. And you guys come along. Are you able, and leading question anyway, but are you able to fix broken tokenomics as well as just start from scratch, if that makes sense?
In all honesty, there are things we can try and assist with, but it depends on the project, and it depends on what's already set in stone. One of the, I guess, benefits of crypto, and why so many people like crypto, is because, generally speaking, smart contracts are set in law. It's very difficult to change things once a project is up and running. So it depends on what they've already got sort of set in stone, and how flexible the project is. But there are always things that can be changed. You can always add in a utility or something, for example, which could bring about hype. So it's possible, but it's very case by case dependent, in all honesty.
Yeah. And I think another big thing is how many tokens are actually out in the market. So, for instance, if you have a circulating supply of, let's say, 5%, then you can change what the other 95% of tokens are being spent on. So, but, if you have your circulating supplies like 50%, then it's probably a bit too late. So that's also another thing to consider.
And just for those who don't know what circulating supply is, mind just explaining?
Yeah, just how many tokens have... how do I say this? Have been minted. Let's say have been minted and are out in the market, available for people to purchase on a decentralized or a centralized exchange. And then the rest of the tokens, which aren't in the circulating supply, are still in their custodial wallet, just waiting to be unlocked, if you like.
Yeah, perfect. So I guess that leads us on to what tokens really are. We talk about tokens and coins and currency and, all these different things are digital assets, all these things, these words are used to describe ultimately the same thing. But there kind of is a difference really between a token and a coin, really, isn't there? And, I know what my opinion is, but I'd love to get your opinion on what a token really is.
Alex, do you want to go here or do you want me to go?
Dan, I thought. Yeah, I thought we'd have Dan go, but so, cool.
Yeah. So, in essence, tokens are very misunderstood. I think there is because crypto is such a new industry, there's no actual concrete thesis for crypto. So many people perceive things to be different. Tokens are basically assets, tradable assets, and they can take on the responsibilities or the functions of financial instruments. So that they can act like a stock. They can act like I don't know what else, like just a unit of exchange, a medium of exchange. So a token really has a lot of purposes or utilities, and there's no real set in stone utility, I think, personally. And we actually came up with a good analogy, I think, myself and Alex will probably be able to explain it better, on a way to perceive a token and the way a token should be valued.
Yeah, so the way that we like to look at it is a token, it's bringing in the whole concept of decentralisation, right? We feel like a token is to a company what a fiat currency is to a whole country. And in the past, you had gold. Gold was like a very, very layman's terms history here, but gold was the universal global currency. And then, long story short, each country now has their own currency, which is, denominated in gold, if you like. And crypto and tokens allow companies to have their own mini currencies within just the company. So now you basically have the top layer, which is like the global currency, which at the moment is US Treasury bills, sort of, or the dollar, whatever you want to say. Then you have the countrywide currencies like the pound, the yen, etc. But now there's this whole other layer where each individual company can have their own currency. And at first, personally, I didn't really understand how that would work. Like, I didn't really know how the exchanges would work and everything else, long story short. But then Dan and I had the debate, and we sort of came to the conclusion that, it would work in the exact same way as the pound versus the yen versus the dollar would work, right? It's just Forex at the end of the day, but just on a micro level. And what that means is that the value of each token, similar to the value of the currency, will be a direct reflection of the but like of the output of the protocol or of the output of the country, right? So if your country is doing great, your currency is valued a lot. And that is, again, very, very massive simplification. There's a lot of other things that go into it, but generally speaking, right? And it'll be the same here. So yeah, pretty much.
So are we, like you say, we're massively simplifying it here, but are we kind of loosely saying that the price of the token effectively is, and I would say similar to a share price of a company, is a reflection of what people think about that particular, token platform, that sort of stuff?
I'd like to say that it's a bit different to a stock, purely because a stock is generally just hype, right? It's just a percentage of equity. However, a token is also similar in that regard. It can be used for governance, which is somewhat like a percentage of your equity, but kind of loosely speaking. But a token is a lot more core to the protocol. There's a lot more utilities. It's used for a lot more things, like as Dan said, medium of exchange. It could be used as a gatekeeper to like memberships. It can be give you, I don't know, discounts, whatever it may be. And that means that there are a lot more things that fuel the value of the token. And to me, that, and I think to Dan as well, that is the value of the protocol per person. That will be the value of the token. So for instance, if I can go on this protocol and let's say it saves me £500, then I feel like I'm a member of a community. So that's another £500 sort of thing. Then to me, the token is valued at $1,000 a pound. Sorry. So that's roughly speaking what we value tokens at.
So I'm jumping slightly on a question here, but if if someone's listening to this and they want to, look at a project and they want to read through the tokenomics and kind of think to themselves, a bit like a trader would look at, a stock and be like, right, this is where I perceive the fair value of that stock to be based on the company and et cetera, et cetera. What are some key things for somebody to look out for when they're trying to value? Because it's hard, for a lot of people to put a value on some of these things. Do you know what I mean? So where do you think some kind of basic points people could look at? Open to either of you, Dan or Alex.
Yeah, for sure. With regards to tokenomics, it's quite complicated because, again, there is just no set framework. The first thing I would personally look at is where the allocations in the tokenomics are. How much of it is going to private investment? How much of it is going to the public? How much of it is in there for rewards? How much is going to the team? For example, if the team's getting 30 or 40% of the tokens, it's an instant avoid, in my opinion. So in terms of actually seeing if it's a good investment or not, you've got to look at red flags more so than what's good. And like I said, red flags would be the team getting too much, VCs getting too much. It could be the vesting schedules. If VCs are getting 20% and they get all the tokens within 1 month, again, that just means 20% of the supply is going to go on sale instantly. They're going to sell them instantly. And with regards to actually valuing the company, that's actually something me and Alex are trying to sort of work on. And I guess that's where we're trying to advance the tokenomics industry. At the minute, there is no real economics, I guess, used, like traditional finance methodology used when valuing a company. It's very much copy and paste. What people do now is they look at similar projects, they look at the valuations, and they think that's where their company should be valued. And what we're trying to actually do is, and we're trying to instill this message in the space in general, is that it should actually be based on financials. You should look at a company's revenue model. You should look at a company's expenses, sunk costs, whatever it may be. It should be a whole overview of the financials which decide the tokenomics. So in terms of actually valuing a project at the minute, there is no real way in all honesty, especially for like a consumer who doesn't have access to the financials, to all of the insider paperwork, and doesn't actually know what's going on in the business. So from an investment perspective, the best way to do it is actually just look for red flags as opposed to trying to find real world value, because no one knows the real value of most of these protocols. Ethereum, no one knows what the true value of Ethereum is. It's all speculative at the minute because it is such a new market. But what you can do is look for red flags which would lead you to avoid an investment, I guess, is the best way to say right now.
Yeah, I guess what's really interesting about that is, we've got a space full of VCs and, experts, in inverted commas, that are, looking at these projects and investing in them at rates, applicable to them that they feel, but actually they're putting their finger in the air in reality, because like you say, there is no hard and fast kind of methodology for this yet. And also, what I've found as well, that a lot of projects, as with, a lot of tech companies, they don't have revenue, and a lot of them, they, especially in some areas like a DEX, for example, they might be earning some trading fees and things like that, but in reality, that's not going to sustain the project. So they've got to do things outside the box in order to, sustain the project. So I think sometimes that hasn't been defined on day one. Sometimes they're kind of working through so it's, these are companies raising money with no future revenue kind of ideas or concepts, but based on the fact that they are, they've got a good sales pitch, basically. And that's, in a way, is you can understand then loosely why someone like 3 Hours Capital, for example, haven't succeeded, or, others like that, because, is it any surprise that they're not succeeding, some of these VCs, when they're investing in companies without value?
Yeah.
No, yeah,
I think just to add to that is
you go, Alex, you go.
Yeah, no, the biggest thing is, the biggest thing I think is the revenue models. That's one of the main things that we look at when we're trying to work out if a project is actually good or not. And exactly as you said, if the company doesn't have any revenue, then that means that either they're going to have to be selling their tokens, which is generally what happens, and therefore that's just a lot of supply being increased. And also it means that it's not really a company; it's like they're in this sort of echo chamber of Web3. I'm a project. It's like they got tasked, homework at school, create a project for me. And then that's what they go to create. Like, these are startup companies that need revenue. They have costs. They need strategies. They need marketing. Like, it's a company at the end of the day. Just because you tokenized, that means cool. You can do a lot more things now. You can make a community a part of you, and so on and so forth. But you're still a company, and if you don't have the revenue models, then you're going to fail pretty much.
Yeah, agreed. And that's also why I think, the word decentralization is used too much, right? Because, decentralization as a concept is great. Moving away from, being reliant on, big tech or big banks or, those sorts of people controlling your data, controlling the movement of your funds in the bank's case, for example, and, things like that. I am a massive, massive advocate for. But when you say, oh, my project is decentralized, there's nobody in control of it, it's fine if you're established to an extent, right? So Uniswap, for example, they've got such a big market now that you could argue that they can be decentralized and actually the company could run fairly positively. But in reality, how many projects are actually decentralized? You know what I mean? And it's just that buzzword, that kind of sales tactic of, oh, we're a decentralized network. But actually, in order for a business to be successful, it needs people at the top. It needs leaders. It needs people to be driving the business forward and things like that. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of the word to an extent, but also I like the concept in general. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think this sort of goes back to our whole point that tokens are just currency for, like, on a micro level for a company. I think once we reach a societal change to that level, then decentralization will be fine because you're decentralized yourself. You detach yourself from the central authorities, if you like, right? Which are, corrupt or not corrupt, whatever you may think. But I feel like one thing that I realized, and I'd like to say as well, because I listened to a few podcasts on like decentralization and just crypto in general, and I think there's one massive misconception, to me anyway. I feel like a company shouldn't be decentralized. An action should be decentralized. A protocol should be decentralized. So what I mean by that is, if you're a decentralized exchange, or maybe not decentralized exchange, but like a DeFi protocol, cool, be decentralized. Like, there's nothing really for the senior suite to be in charge of, right? It's a protocol, it's just some code. However, if you're a company, if you have, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, at the end of the day, you do need some people to be in control of that. And there's a great article by Vitalik on DAOs. And what he says is that when the decision is concave, and what that means is, let's say you have option A and option B. If the decision is concave, whereby the result is higher in between option A and B, then having the masses vote on that is actually better, because there's been some studies and like the masses together vote on a better outcome when the outcome which is better is a blend between A and B. However, if the decision is A or B, so when it's convex, then you need just a central authority to choose that decision. Like, you can't have a group of people who aren't specialized in the field. They're not particularly good at operations. They're not executives, etc. Like, they can't make those decisions. And I think that's my main issue with decentralization, to be honest.
Yeah, and that what we'll do is I'll get you to send me that article, and we'll stick that in the description for people to read. But and I'm going to liken this to, and I'm not getting into the politics of it, but this was my biggest argument about Brexit, because it's the same sort of scenario, right? You are giving people the power to make a decision on something they don't know enough about, and not only do they not know enough about the decision in terms of like whether right or wrong to say yes or no, but they also don't know what the impact is going to be. They haven't got enough information to make a decision, and that's my issue. Exactly what you just said with decentralization is, if I'm asked to make a decision on a protocol, how do I know that my decision is right or wrong when I haven't got all the information in front of me? And that is the biggest. I think if you can provide information, that gives enough reading for someone to make a decision and whatnot, then fine. But even then, you're going to get people as part of that decision that haven't read the material or haven't looked into the to fact check what you're being told, and it was it was interesting actually, because I don't know if you remember. Obviously, you remember when the Terra Luna thing happened, but when they were looking at the kind of fork to like Terra 2, if you want to call it that, they put the kind of proposal, if you like, to the community. on the platform. And like, what choice did the community actually have? Fail completely and go to zero and absolute nothing, or try something different and go for a round two, as it were. They had no choice. Do you know what I mean? That's not and also that's not a decision that the community should make. They're not in a nice possible way, they're not educated enough to make that decision. That needs, do you know what I mean? It needs leaders to make. And I'm using that as an example rather than saying that,
of course,
there was another decision that could have made. But that's not a decision that normal human beings that are investing in a project, in my opinion, can make. It needs experts and whatnot. So I think, I'm obviously reiterating your point, but I think that is so key. That why give people the power to make a decision when they haven't got the right information to make it?
No, completely agreed. I agree with both of you. Both really touched on it well. And with the Luna situation as well, I feel. Oh, sorry.
No, go on. I was going to. Yeah, that'd be useful actually if you could, touch on that piece, because there's a lot of things
like
going on about
decision,
that. Get your thoughts on what happened.
With the decision you just mentioned, I feel like it's almost like a leading question. Like you said, there's no real option there, and that's one of the issues I've seen with governance votes in general in the space. Oftentimes, the vote is put forward by the people who are supposedly not in charge of the decentralized network, but in reality, they don't really give you an option. Like that was a prime example. It's either lose all your money, or potentially lose all your money, potentially save your money. Everyone's going to vote for Luna too. Like it's just it's like a myth of decentralization almost. It's like it's like you said, it's a buzzword used by a lot of creators and a lot of people in the space to just try and sell their product. It's an illusion more so than a reality.
And there's even a great question, like how many validators of your famous layer ones are controlled by the same people? It's like I can't remember the exact statistics, but is it really decentralized? Like, just because you gave the ability for someone to pay $20,000 in ETH tokens or whatever it is to become a validator, that doesn't mean that there isn't more than 5 validators in total. Obviously I know there is, but like just as an example, like just because you give the ability for your network to be decentralized doesn't mean it actually is, because there are a set number of validators, right? So that's also another thing there.
And a funny note on that is actually someone in the American government, I forgot who it was, I think it was a member of the SEC. I'll find an article after and it can be posted in the description as well if anyone's interested. But someone from the American SEC basically said, because most of Ethereum's nodes are run on the Amazon Web Service, Ethereum is actually property of the American government. So like, is that decentralized? And he's like genuinely trying to push for Ethereum to become property of the American government now.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, send that over. That'd be useful to look at. And that, that just sums up really the position. And the other thing I saw recently was, I think it was this week, there was something about Binance and owning a significant amount of Uniswap tokens. And then I can't remember exactly. And then didn't they say that they accidentally delegated them or something stupid like that? I can't remember exactly what happens. I don't know if you saw it, but again, a large corporate like Binance are able, if they want, to hold a significant portion of a token. And where does the decentralization come from there? If I'm making this up, but if 80% of Uniswap is owned by Binance, FTX, Kraken, Crypto.com, for example, all of a sudden you've got a huge decentralized network that's actually massively centralized by the 4 biggest players, in the crypto space from an exchange perspective. So I think the only way to really make that work is to limit the total amount that somebody could hold. Do you know what I mean? In order to, from a governance perspective, because otherwise, like you say, I could go and buy 100% of a token right now, and I'm now in control. So there's a lot of work that he's doing to perfect this model, I think.
No, completely agreed. But that's the beauty of the space. It's so new that we have so much time to, I guess, innovate now. It's still being found out what's actually going to work.
And for people like you as well, there's a huge opportunity for you guys to really kind of help businesses, companies, projects, whatever you want to call them, to perfect is the wrong word, but to really kind of nail down a a model that works, etc. But also there's a huge opportunity for projects that haven't, kind of come out with these crazy models that don't work. There's a huge opportunity for those to look at the failures of people in the past and get things right. So like you say, the fact that we're still so early, but we've seen a lot of ups and downs gives every project the opportunity to look at how they can move forward positively.
Yeah, for sure. Alex,
So,
do you want to say something?
Look, guys, I mean, we're on the, we're on the, I was just going to say, we're on the kind of 26, 27 minutes, I think, Mark. So normally time we start thinking about wrapping up. But Alex, did you have, some kind of closing thoughts you wanted to put across?
My closing thoughts might be closing with a few shots. Binance recently, since you were discussing Binance, they did a report on tokenomics, and we reviewed it, and it turns out that Binance doesn't really know what tokens are. And then we reviewed a project which had Animoca Brands as the lead investor, and Animoca Brands developed the tokenomics, and those tokenomics were terrible. They were so bad. The liquidity was nowhere near enough, and there were so many other issues that I don't really want to get into here. But it just means that when the leaders in the space, actually, final shot there. Sam Bankman-Fried on a podcast just basically described Ponzi schemes and said, "This is what was it? This is what DeFi was, or something like that." I can't remember. But when you have the leaders of the space not knowing what tokens are, not knowing how economics are meant to be run properly, it's just there's not really a lot of hope. And I think that's where we are trying to fill that gap of information.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think, and this is no offense, I don't want Sam Bankman-Fried's legal team to come after me, but I actually saw somewhere there was an article that said something like, are some of these crypto leaders actually a danger to the crypto market? Do you know what I mean? Because of the influence they have. But I guess that, as much as we talk about that is also true of the likes of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Tim Cook and people like that as well, right? And ultimately, those three people, in a sense, control the economy, as well, because of the size of the organizations that they run, So, it's as much as we can criticize, kind of the crypto world, if you like, for some of that. It does happen in the traditional world. We're just more used to it. And do you know what I mean? It kind of gets a bit more brushed under the carpet, I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, well, look, guys, it's been fascinating having you and chatting through these bits and pieces. I'd love to get back to talking more detail, especially if you guys have done more and more research on things like this, and anything you mentioned today that you can send over for us to leave in the description for people to read would be fantastic. So, just lastly, where if people want to kind of talk more about this, or they need some tokenomics for their project, etc., where can these people reach out to you?
Yeah, so we have a LinkedIn. Both of us are posting on LinkedIn, but we have a company LinkedIn, just Simplicity Consultancy, with a nice circular logo. And then we also have a Twitter. It's at SimplicityWeb3. I guess those are the main two ways. If people want, then they can reach out to us on Telegram directly, and the Telegram will be the Telegram handles will be at the bottom in the description. But those are the main two places, and also our website, I suppose, simplicityconsultancy.net.
Perfect. Well, great having you, and we'll definitely be speaking again soon, guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us, Joe. It was a pleasure.
Cheers.
And thank you. Cheers.
You're welcome,
guys.